Welcome, beautiful souls, for all of those who are on live today. And if you're watching on replay, I do want to invite you to grab a paper, pen, or Word document because today is going to be a little bit immersive. And, I said this before hitting record, but I'll say it again. I promise you guys, what you put into these next 45 minutes will be reflected back to you in measure. And if it's possible, feel free to come on camera. I know some of us are just waking up. That's totally okay. And you don't want to show bedhead, whatever feels safe to you. But if it is available to you, I do invite you to just be a part of the energy of this group. It really is a beautiful thing that we have when we do these master classes because we're super overstimulated in just the world we live in. And we've got, notifications, all of these external stimuli, all the things. And this is a chance to really tune into your own intuition today. I don't want to just talk at you guys. I'm going to be guiding you guys back to yourself and getting really in touch with what's inside that may be needing to come forward, needing to come through. So, if possible, quiet the noise. And we're going to start out with a little guided grounding technique, which some of you have heard me teach before, but my favorite is the 5 senses. This is a way just to kind of like settle in, get back into our bodies. And so I see you guys are muted. You can speak out loud if you want to, but I'd invite you to name 5 things that you can see right now in front of you. So I see roses, a card, bananas, Uno cards, and a book. What are 5 things that you see? And now, what are 4 things that you can hear? Tune into the noises that are close to you and those that are far away. 4 things you can hear. Now, 3 things you can physically feel or touch. So you might, hair on my neck, I feel my legs crossing over each other and a comfy cushion beneath me. 2 things you can smell now. I have like no sense of smell for this. I usually skip over this one. It's not from long COVID. I just have never had a good sense of smell. And then 1 thing you can taste. Maybe the last thing you took a bite or a sip of. Lemon water over here. So let's take a collective deep breath in our nose and sigh it out. 1 more deep breath in and sigh it out. You made it here. This is the hardest part. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I'm Becky Aste, and I just want to say I'm seriously so happy you're here or watching on recording. This is my online home. This is where all the magic happens in my clients' lives. So you're stepping into sacred Zoom room ground right now. And I promise what I plan to deliver to you today in this free masterclass is going to be at the same level that I give to my paying clients. I'm going to deliver straight value to you. So I really, really am excited and honored you're here. I'm bringing you this topic today, 3 keys to unbreakable trust in your marriage. Not because my marriage has always been a pinnacle example of this profound, unbreakable trust, but because we went through some massive explosions as well as micro traumas, you could call it. I like to just call it death by 1,000 paper cuts in our marriage that eventually shattered our trust in each other and led to our ultimate separation and near divorce. Fast forward 10 years into marriage, I'm looking up the legal cost of divorce while planning my best friend's wedding. And I remember calling her panicked on the brink of a nervous breakdown and just being like, Courtney, I don't feel well. Like I feel like my foundation, I don't have it. Like my mind is starting to slip into a really dark place. I think this is where people are when they're on the verge of being admitted for psychiatric help. Like I don't feel well. And that was the time in my life when I stumbled upon this last second buzzer beater key that would end up saving our marriage. But to be honest, guys, what's so much more valuable for what I got out of this process and what I'm going to share with you today is that it ended up saving me. The program that I went through was just my introduction to somatic work. Somatic, it really means pertaining to the body, especially in differentiation to the mind. And so it was the first time after 10 years of trying all the things from the neck up, like talk therapy and reading books and listening to podcasts and venting to my girlfriends and, all of these things that tapped into cerebral or auditory or vocal. This program was the first time that it taught me how to get back into my body and restore safety in my nervous system and move trauma out of my body. And it's what ended up taking our deep resentment and mutual mistrust to radical acceptance and trust so deep that now where we're at, not even an atomic bomb could rip us apart, honestly. And so today I'm going to give you the 3 keys to unbreakable trust that I wish I knew a decade ago and hope to save you 10 more years of broken trust or unnecessary suffering and honestly avoidable trauma. So key number 1 is trust in yourself. Just so we're on the same page of a collective definition of trust, it's a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Like I trust this chair, right? Right now, like it's reliable. I've sat in it a million times. It's never fallen out from beneath me. It's strong. And so trust in ourself is like, I am reliable. I speak my truth. I am capable. I am strong. It's like that movie, The Help. Have you guys seen that? Where the help is talking to the little girl and she's like, you is smart, you is kind, you is important. I love that. She's trying to instill trust, self-trust in this little girl from a young age. So I don't know if you guys can relate, but put in the chat, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much self-trust you would say you have at this point. 1 is like, I don't trust myself at all. 10 is I trust myself more than anyone in the world. I've got me, I'm confident. I am, like the little girl in The Help. I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm important. But 2, 8, not at all. Thank you for the vulnerability. 7, love it. So it's a wide range, a spectrum, right, of where our trust is. So let's start with unpacking what corrodes our trust. 1 is since childhood. Like some of us had well-meaning parents that habitually and unintentionally invalidated our emotions. It's not their fault. An example I like to give with childhood wounds, or if we didn't grow up in an environment that was healthy, or our parents, caused some kind of trauma, whether explicitly or implicitly, is like a car backing out of the driveway. Let's say your parents are backing the car out of the driveway. They accidentally run over your foot. They didn't mean to at all. It was a blind spot for them. And so they're not bad, right? They're not malicious, but at the same time, you have a broken foot. And now it's your responsibility, your choice to get healing and support for that, right? And so some ways this can show up in our childhood. Let's say we fall down when we're little girls and we bust our head and we're crying, and then our mom is like, you're okay, you're okay. Is this conflict of like, but wait, like I really freaking hurt right now, like this hurts, but my mom is saying I'm okay. Do I trust me or do I trust my mom? Or let's say you're full at the dinner table and your mom's like, you need to finish all of your vegetables. When your like button is bursting and you're like, I actually feel like I'm going to be sick if I have one more bite. But my mom is saying I need to finish. Do I trust me and my body, or do I trust what mom's saying right now? Or, a parent being like, okay, hug Uncle Teddy goodbye, when for some reason you just feel unsafe. Maybe you don't know Uncle Teddy, or something about your body is just flinching and resisting and you don't want to hug him, but your mom is pushing you to hug him. Do I trust me, or mom says this? Like it starts to corrode our trust in ourselves and our body. We're not taught from a young age how to really build a trust in ourselves, unintentionally, right? or for my house, it was just me sensing tension all the time. There was always an elephant in the room in the house that I grew up in. Drop the word elephant. If you can relate, there was just a lot of passive aggressive tension where I grew up. And I remember asking my mom one day, Mom, do you ever think about divorcing dad? And, it was a response. Her response was, I don't believe in divorce. That's what she said. And in retrospect, it's like it would have been nice if she hadn't had the blind spot, if she had been taught by her parents how to navigate that of like, oh, Becky, like, why do you ask that question? What's coming up for you? What are you feeling? What are you noticing? Like, let's talk through this. But I constantly felt something was off, but nobody was helping me make meaning of it. And so it led me to believe maybe I'm crazy or oversensitive. So yeah, I see a lot of elephants in the room. Another one is something that can corrode our trust is a history of emotional or psychological abuse. This corrodes our relationship with our own intuition. One buzzword that is going around and, very popular now is gaslighting. And it's used incorrectly a lot of the time, but at the same time, like at least there's awareness and it's becoming a part of our vocabulary. But gaslighting, it's a form of emotional abuse. It is used as a way of manipulating a person's reality. So people who gaslight others, and we've all probably done it too. Like it's just our ego taking over, sometimes. But people who gaslight others do so as an attempt to avoid pain, control people in their life, and manipulate outcomes in their favor. So one example of this was just Sunday night. I play on a co-ed rec soccer league, and my friend Liz said on the way there, she was in the front seat, was driving with another teammate, and her husband was behind her, I guess like pulling on her hair, like pulled twice on her hair, was just trying to like be funny. And she was like, Brad, you pulled on my hair. And he was like, no, I didn't. And she was like, yes, you did. I felt it twice. He was like, no, just once. That's just like a lighthearted, funny example of gaslighting. It was like, no, this is reality. I felt it twice, and you're trying to distort this reality, whether it's to protect yourself or, somebody's view of you or create an outcome in his favor. Okay, but sometimes it's not so lighthearted of a situation. Sometimes it's us being in relationships where we hear habitually from our husband that you're overreacting or you're too sensitive, or we're trying to share something that happened maybe even years ago of how that is still impacting us and still hurting us. And the response we get is, it didn't happen that way, or no, I never said that, or I never did that. Which sometimes we're all human. Sometimes our memory isn't perfect, right? And words are semantics, right? Maybe I didn't hear it exactly that way. But what a healthy response would be is from a partner who's able to say, goals would be, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that was the message you internalized. Like, tell me what you've carried, tell me what's going through your head. How can we work through this? Whereas gaslighting is just focused on his self-protection of like, no, I didn't do that, right? Or for, my clients whose husbands are looking at pornography every day, but then hiding it from their wives. That's not something they've agreed on in their marriage. And their wife is just getting the sense that there's a disconnection between them and wondering and brings it up to her husband. And he's just like, I don't know, you're crazy. And so you start to wonder, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I'm oversensitive. Maybe I'm making a problem out of nothing. This is gaslighting. So another way that, well-intentioned, often communities or people can go through this corroded sense of connection with their own intuition is through spiritual communities. In the, growing up, there's this Bible verse that is an amazing verse, but it's really taken out of context. And it's, the heart is deceitful above all things. And I had that hammered deep into me, to the point where it was like, you do not trust yourself or your feelings or anything, because your feelings and your heart are bad, deceitful. When you dissect the original Greek translation, it really means more of something like willfully concealed, more than, or it's not this like willful deception. It's more the idea of deep things, like things that are hidden so deep because they run so deep. but it was often used in Greek language as a word to describe like the deep sea. So it's not this like you're bad and evil and deceptive. It's like, wow, there's a lot of buried things that it takes a wise person to draw them out. But an example of how that showed up in my spiritual community, I remember booking a spring break trip in college, and I was so excited. I was actually going to go and meet up with my now husband, and we were doing this like mission trip work for like a week on a college campus. Like it was like a good thing, and I was really excited for it. And the person who was mentoring me in the church at that time, she was like, "Why did you book that? Why didn't you think about our home ministry? Like what were you thinking? Like we have stuff that we're doing on our campus." Like it was immediate shaming. And so all of a sudden, what felt good for me, something I was really looking forward to, got punished. And so the message that I internalized with that is, oh, I cannot trust my gut. My gut leads to punishment, it leads to rejection, and ultimately the retraction of my basic core human need, which is love and belonging. So just a tiny example. Okay, so there's things that corrode our trust. And then we get to this place where we realize we're either a 1, a 3, a 7, wherever we are on the scale of self-trust. We want to rebuild trust in ourselves. And so how do we do that? Honestly, you can just think of it like mini trust falls. Did you ever do that as a kid on the playground? At first, your trust level is a little low. You're like, is this kid gonna catch me? And then after your friend catches you, you're like, okay, I can take a breath, of relief and fall a little easier next time. The trust builds more and more and more the more you do it. Same with me sitting on this chair. I've sat in it a million times. My trust in this chair is a 10. But I remember this example of my coach, Kelly Brock. Some of you know her. She asked me after our 6 months of working with her, she asked me, how, Becky, did you go from a woman who did not trust herself at all to somebody who consistently trusts herself and is led by her intuition? And I thought about it, and it really wasn't this like one big moment. Like May 14th was the big breakthrough I had, and then all of a sudden I trusted myself. It was actually, I quoted her own words back to her, which she would always tell me is, you're going to wonder how to get there until you're wondering how you got there. You're going to wonder how to get there until you wonder how you got there. So it's these tiny, almost imperceivable moments along the way, these series of mini trust falls that you lean into something that you're feeling called towards, and it goes well again and again and again, and it builds your confidence. So you guys watching this webinar right now is a mini trust fall. If you're finding value here right now, if you feel safe, if you're glad you showed up, drop the word value in the chat. This is a trust fall. You stepped out of your comfort zone, you stepped out on a ledge, you registered for this. Maybe you've never come into this community before and you're like, stranger danger, like, what is going on? But you're here and you've proved to yourself, yay, I see value coming up in the chat. So you've proved to yourself that like, hey, I can make valuable choices for myself, and I can trust that I was leaning into this. And when I saw it on Becky's stories, or when a friend shared it with me, I took initiative for myself. And I'm so happy I said yes to my healing on this micro level today. So back to the definition of trust, you can assert this right now in this moment, like anchor this in. I am reliable. Feel free to even put your hand on your heart right now. Like, I showed up for myself. I'm capable. I stepped out of my comfort zone. I'm strong. I'm taking steps towards myself that 95% of the population are too afraid to take. A mini series of trust falls. Another example of this, I don't know how many of you, if you've had children, pee when you sneeze. I had big babies, like really big, 914 and 915, and my pelvic floor has needed help for 7 years now, sisters. But I've avoided it for so long for a number of different reasons. There's just blocks that came up with the idea of doing pelvic floor therapy. It's not covered with my insurance, yada, yada, yada. For 7 years, I put this off. And so recently I was talking to a friend about it, and the mini trust fall, the little step towards my healing that I took, was just putting it on my to-do list to look up pelvic floor therapist. This was just a couple weeks ago, and she's actually going to watch this webinar on replay. And then yesterday, for the first time in 7 years, I freaking called around and left my number, and I'm waiting for a call back today from pelvic floor therapists. And guess what? I didn't die. I actually felt so freaking proud of myself. Like, what in the actual world? Why did I wait 7 years to do that? That was so easy. But inch by inch, we build confidence in an area that can feel daunting. And for some of us, that's healing our marriage. That's a really daunting thing. And so it's these mini little micro steps that end up getting us there. Thank you guys. Yay. So what is something that comes up for you? Maybe something you've been avoiding or procrastinating. And often when we call these things to mind, I don't know if you can relate to this, there's an immediate feeling of shame that comes with it. We call that the second arrow in our client group, where the first arrow is the suffering that we all experience as humans, where it's, stress, anxiety, grief, all these things that are natural to all humans. But then we come around and hit ourselves with the second arrow. We call the second arrow of shame, where it's not just I'm struggling with anxiety or stress or overwhelm, but I'm bad for struggling with this. I suck for struggling with this. I'm deficient in some way. So without shame, with like, hey, this is a safe space. We've all got our things. Procrastinating is just a way of delaying pain. What's something that you have been putting off or just not wanting to deal with? The thing is, the problem, you could say, is our body keeps the score. You may have heard that phrase, or actually have that book right here. It's a famous book, Gaining Popularity by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. Our body keeps the score of what we've been through, the trauma, the, good, the bad, the ugly. Our body keeps the score of it, whether or not our brain decides to bring it to consciousness. And so you will feel an energy of being weighed down, even when you sweep things under the rug or avoid or procrastinate. I give my clients the example of the princess and the pea. That story where she sleeps on 20 mattresses, but there's a pea at the very bottom, and she wakes up and her back is all like sore and she's tight and her neck hurts because that little pea she could feel through all the mattresses. And so I say that with us. Sometimes it's just these little things that we think, I don't need to talk about it, or it's not a big deal, or do it later. But then we're like manifesting discomfort in our body somehow, because even if it's so small, that's the way we're designed, where, we're designed to be in harmony between what's inside of us and what's on the outside. And so when we keep the truth locked up, or if there's a lack of harmony between the truth inside of us and what we're expressing outwardly, our body will feel it. Our self-trust will shrivel up to nothingness, if we don't have safe places to express ourselves authentically. Now, sometimes that safe place is not our husband at first. Sometimes it starts with a friend or a community, or, just a safe person to talk to, where you begin to really find your voice and exercise this muscle and at least get the pee out from under the mattresses. So 2 examples of the way this could go with 2 clients of mine. One, Denisha, if you've listened to my most recent podcast, she shared her story of, she came to me asking for help, and I said, what's your gut saying? And she's like, I don't know. I've never been asked that question before. All I can say right now is I feel like I need to talk to my husband about his depression. She had never really had that conversation. It was something that had been, bothering her, that she felt like she needed to talk about. And so very early in the program, she ended up having that conversation. She felt safe and ready. And that was a first for her. And it was the beginning of her turnaround. And now, her and her husband are doing amazing. He is doing really well, as also just because of the changes that she made, that she really initiated this change in their toxic dance. So that's one example. But another client who wants to remain anonymous, she was the anonymous interview on my podcast actually last month. And she spent the first about 4 months in the program just speaking her truth to our safe space, because it did not feel safe yet to speak to her husband. But it came the time when she built so much self-trust that she felt in her body, in her gut, like, okay, now is the time to open the door. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel pushed. I actually feel totally fine and unattached to how this conversation goes. And that's how I know I'm ready. And now they talk so honestly and so authentically about everything in their life for the first time in their 20-year marriage. And it's beautiful. Like, makes me want to tear up when I think about them. But whatever, you've been avoiding or not speaking, that you feel in your bones that it's time to begin bringing a level of healing to this part of your life, ask yourself, what is a tiny micro step I can make today, even towards the exploration of that healing? And maybe it's just writing it down on your to-do list right now, grabbing your phone, writing it down, or texting a friend to ask you tomorrow if you paid that bill that you've been putting off, or finally being brave enough to set up that mammogram or whatever it is. What's a tiny micro step you can take today? Okay, so mini trust falls. The last way to rebuild trust that we'll talk about today is subconscious rewiring. So I do affirmations every day. I include EFT tapping, actually, which is like tapping on meridian points and saying affirmations at the same time. It like supercharges your subconscious rewiring. And so this is where we're going to grab our pen and paper or Word document and begin writing down just a couple of the recurring negative thoughts that we have about ourselves. So I will give you an example. Maybe just write down three. Three examples for me, common like limiting beliefs or negative thoughts that I have towards myself is, you're so uptight. For those of you who know the Enneagram, I identify with an Enneagram type 1. So that can be a really negative thought in my head. You're so uptight, Becky. What's one for you? Feel free to write it down. Another one for me is, you're so absent-minded. I am notorious in my home for like leaving light switches on. I've left candles burning when I leave the house. Like, it has annoyed my husband to no end. And so that is a shame message that has gone through my head, is you're so absent-minded. Another is, you're falling behind or not doing enough. The way I'm wired, I have, a constant running to-do list of things and tasks to get done. And so I have fallen into the trap of just constantly feeling like I'm trying to play catch up, which I know a lot of women can relate to. It's also the society we live in. So when you have these written down, next to them, I want to invite you to write a projected vision of where you'd like to be in this area. For example, my message of you're so uptight, next to it, I would write, I'm learning how safe it is for my body to relax. Maybe it's too much of a stretch for me to jump to, I'm the most relaxed human on the planet, because I'm not yet. I'm still healing a lot of like a decade of hustle culture and all of this stuff. And so what feels like truth to me, but is still projecting, to where I want to be, is I'm learning how safe it is for my body to relax. For my second one, you're so absent-minded, what I wrote next to it is, I'm actively healing a brain that's been fragmented by years of trauma. Such a more compassionate approach, right? Because truth is, I've been through a lot and I know what trauma does. It fragments your brain. And so for all of the different things that I've been through, betrayal, abandonment, psychological abuse, I was noticing myself like dropping glasses and forgetting things. And, like I said, and so what has helped me grow more in that area than anything before, trying to whip myself into shape or force myself to be better, is this compassionate message of, I'm actively healing a brain that's been fragmented by years of trauma. The last one, you're falling behind. I affirm every morning now, it is safe for me to take breaks today. And actually, the more breaks I take, the more aligned I am with my purpose. Okay, so these are just some examples. And I would love to guide you just through a mini little taste of a tapping session. Does anyone feel safe enough to volunteer? And if not, I can just show you solo. I have no problem doing that. But would anyone like to share what they came up with? Did you raise your hand, Gisela? Yay, come off mute. Thank you, friend. All right. So Gisela, what was your first message?
Oh, I'm ugly.
What was that? Ugly?
Yes.
Relatable. Put in the chat if you can relate to body image issues. Okay, thank you. That's such a good one. So what you would do with tapping is you can copy what I'm doing right now, Gisela. You would start, we usually tap with right here on the side of our palm. And you could say, I have for years believed I was ugly. I have for years believed I was ugly. I have for years believed I was ugly. Would you mind saying that out loud while tapping?
I have believed for years that I am ugly. I have believed for years that I'm ugly. I have believed for years that I'm ugly.
And now what was the next message you wrote next to it?
The better one or another one that's faulty.
Yeah, the better one. Yeah.
I'm trying to accept myself.
What was it?
Trying to accept myself.
I love it, right? It might feel like a lie if you were just like, I'm hotter than Beyonce. Maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're going to get there. The mini micro step is I'm learning to accept myself. So another meridian point you can tap on is right above your eyebrows. You could say, I'm learning to accept myself. I'm learning to accept myself. I'm learning to accept myself.
I'm learning to accept myself. I'm learning to accept myself. I'm learning to accept myself.
Awesome. Give a round for Gisela. Thank you so much. I just wanted to show you, like, that's what tapping looks like if you've never, you may have heard of it, never done it. There's different meridian points in our body that it really, studies have shown how dramatically tapping can help rewire your limiting beliefs, your negative thoughts about yourselves, and why it's so much more powerful than just affirmations alone. So fun fact, and thank you, Gisela. I appreciate that so much. Fun fact, we all have messages going up and down, through the vagus nerve, which is the giant nerve that runs from the base of our skull to the bottom of our spine. Neurotransmitters constantly running up and down that vagus nerve all the time in our body. 20% of those messages go from our brain into our body, and 80% go from the body up to the brain. And so when we do things like just saying affirmations or just talking things out or just reading or listening to podcasts, all those things are awesome, but that's working with the 20% of the flow in our body. If you want to supercharge your healing, it's the body work, like incorporating the body piece into it. And so that's why I'm such a fan with EFT tapping, is when you're tapping on those points, it's bringing you out of the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest, digest, I am safe. And that's when the healing really takes place. Because for years, if we're trying all of these different modalities and means of healing, and we feel like we're spinning our wheels and we're only tapping into things from the neck up, it's not because we're broken. It's because we're like salmon swimming upstream. It's like throwing a seed onto concrete and hoping something will take root. But when you incorporate the body piece, it is like you've got fertile ground now. Your body is in a state of nervous system regulation, and it's ready to absorb whatever you're throwing down. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So affirmations while walking can supercharge, affirmations after grounding, like the 5 senses we did, affirmations while tapping. This is where the beauty is. Okay? So guys, key number 1 was the longest one because it's truly the most important. And if you can truly embody the level of self-trust that we're talking about, then keys number 2 and 3 are no-brainers. Like, it just comes with the territory, because you become a woman who believes to her core, I am reliable even when I can't rely on my husband. I speak my truth even when my husband is lying to my face. I'm capable even when my husband doesn't do his part. I'm strong even if he fails to honor my strength. This is the deep work that even if your husband has proven to be 100% untrustworthy, this is the key that can change y'all's toxic dance and start stepping into a new reality where you're completely led by yourself as a woman, your God, your intuition. And he actually begins taking steps to show up as a man who's trustworthy. This is what leads us to key number 2, trust in your husband. So first of all, what destroys trust in our husbands? Well, he breaks our trust, right? He cheats, he lies, he doesn't keep his word, he treats the kids in a way that's not cool, whatever it is. You know, some of us, we've lived the nightmare of shattered vows. And for others of us, it's what I like to call death by 1,000 paper cuts. You know, it's been 12 years and he's still not helping you with the finances or the household or whatever it is that he said he was going to do. He doesn't keep his word. Another thing that corrodes your trust in your husband is actually your own past trauma, nothing to do with him. Our body keeps the score. So for me, it was abandonment issues. My dad died suddenly when I was 18, and I came into marriage with that baggage of, I'm terrified you're going to abandon me, even when he hadn't given any kind of proof that he was going anywhere. Another one is snooping on the phone. Guys, how many of us have done that? Like looking at his text messages or his emails or his internet search history. It's a really common way for us to seek security and safety and to find out the truth. But what it actually does, guys, is keeps us stuck in our trauma. It keeps us stuck in that state of hypervigilance. And so that's something that, you know, I love to explore with my clients of like, how do you feel after snooping? Does it actually help you rebuild trust? Do you feel good about yourself? What is your body doing? That's something worth noting. The last thing that does not build trust in our husband is trying to change him. Oof, like, come on, drop that one in the chat on a level of 1 to 10. How much you radically accept your husband for who he is today. 1 is like, nah, honestly, it would make me feel so much better if he was a completely different person. To 10 is, oh, I just want to empower him to be his most authentic self. I just love every little thing about him. See a lot of 2s in the chat. Yep, 4. Okay, so glad we're like on the same page. So what rebuilds trust in our husbands? It's not his actions. That might sound wild to you, but it's going back to key number 1. Your trust in your husband begins and ends with trust in yourself. Now you might be thinking like, wait, what are you talking about? He needs to prove his trust, Becky. Like he was the perpetrator. But let me ask you, how long have you been waiting for him to prove it to you? You know, myself and my clients, we've watched our husbands say they're sorry. They've tried couples counseling, even if we dragged them there. They've gone to therapy or searched in their own way through books, whatever. But we're still just as hypervigilant as ever. Like just waiting for the rug to be pulled from underneath us again, or tensing our stomach and holding our breath and bracing for this possibility of another blow. And so my 2 questions for you with this is, if you're waiting for your husband to prove his trustworthiness to you, 1 is, how is that working? Like, no dig at you, but how is it working? Like waiting for him to reach this level where finally now he's proven enough. Are you still hypervigilant? Do you still feel stuck? And then 2, when is it enough? Because the truth is, he could be doing all the things, like with all his heart, in total integrity and pure motives. But if you're caught in this vibe, this energy, this state, this body, this nervous system of hypervigilance, if you've got this like prove it energy that you're still carrying around, him proving it to you, then you won't be able to see trustworthiness if it slapped you in the face. Because when you're still in that sympathetic nervous system, before you've moved trauma out of your body, you see everything through a lens of danger or potential danger. I've got clients who come into the program who've gone through some serious abuse, some serious trauma. Their husbands are like angels, like amazing. They're like, I don't get it. Like they've done nothing wrong. And every time they try to initiate affection or sex, I flinch as if they're like about to hurt me. And so what I'm about to say might sound like the strangest thing in the world to you, but the secret key to trusting your husband is actually the same key you already have. Key number 1 is trusting yourself. You know, when my husband moved back in after we were separated for months, my nervous system had taken time to heal. And that distance for me, it was what I dreaded our entire marriage, but it's what my body needed. And I was able to literally breathe again, think and see clearly. And I remember when people ask me, like, what was the shift? How did you guys actually start to heal? How did you learn to trust him again? I remember sitting at this very table right here, talking with him. And for the first time, talking about our marriage and listening to what he had to say, I wasn't focused on his words and reading his eyes and his facial expressions and his body language and like studying it like, this hyper vigilant woman. I was tuning into my body. I was doing secretly those 5 senses to ground my body. And I was noticing, like, how does my body feel as he's talking? And for the first time in our marriage, as he's speaking his truth, I notice my shoulders feel relaxed. My breath is open. I feel safe. And it was the first time I was able to say, oh my gosh, I actually trust what he's telling me right now is true. Not because of the words coming out of his mouth, but because of how my body feels in his presence. Because my body, I know now, I did not used to know this, my body never lies to me. Your body will not lie. Your body always speaks the truth. And so this is the power of learning to trust your husband again. There's an example of my coach, the first coach that I invested in for my marriage. Her husband on their anniversary was like, thank you, honey, so much for trusting me after all we've been through. He had betrayed her in the past. They healed after infidelity and they're thriving now. But she was like, oh, honey, just to set the record straight, I trust me. I trust my body. I trust how I feel in your presence. And this has been the key for so many women, my clients, myself included. And so that's trust in our husband. Ladies, the final key today is trust in your marriage, like as a separate entity. We've talked about 3 entities today: ourselves, our husbands, and then there's our marriage. So trust in yourself plus trust in your husband naturally equals trust in your marriage. It's like 1 + 2 = 3. When you learn to truly, madly, deeply trust yourself, as well as learn how to trust your husband and see his effort clearly for what it is, accepting where both yourself and he are along your individual journeys, not perfection, but like, I trust that their intentions are good and they're on their path to healing. This is what opens the door for authentic intimacy between you two as a partnership. Okay, what does not rebuild trust in your marriage is, before healing your trauma and all of this, is jumping straight into couples counseling. But I think a lot of us have done that. Before we've moved trauma out of our body, we can learn all the communication tools in the world, but if our body's still carrying all that pain, it's like you're holding this energetic sign up that says, I cannot be trusted. Body language is actually 93% of communication. So like our body posture, our voice, our intonation of our inflection, our, eyes, expressions, all of that, 93% of communication is body language, energy. Only 7% is words. And so a lot of us are trying to find all the right words and the right ways to communicate, and we're wondering why it's not going well. It's the deeper energetic work that we got to dive into. Another thing that doesn't work for rebuilding trust in your marriage is the Band-Aid fixes, like just, oh, if we go on this vacation, that'll, make us happy again, or date nights, or makeup sex, or marriage retreats, or posting pictures of us together because that will make me feel like it's really there. Those are just surface level things. And then, like we talked about earlier, the top-down techniques, the things from our neck up, without the complement or foundation of nervous system repair, we're going to feel either slow progress or spinning our wheels, or worst case scenario, where my husband and I ended up, on the verge of divorce, actually worse off than when we started. So what does rebuild trust in our marriage is, just like with yourself, those mini trust falls. It's that first time that you have an honest conversation with your husband and it actually goes well. Like, you actually spoke your truth. No one tried to change each other. You give each other a high five, like, whoa, that's different. Another thing is, once you have had the personal breakthrough, it's learning to expand your nervous system to hold that expansion. Once you have started to change the toxic dance of your marriage, rewiring your nervous system to hold that. An example, I don't know if you know this, but lottery winners, 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within a few years. Not just broke, like bankrupt. Like my son is broke, my 7-year-old son. He's got $10 to his name right now in his piggy bank, but he's also got 0 debts or financial obligations. But bankrupt is, it's been declared by law that you are unable to pay outstanding debts. So why have 70% of lottery winners gone bankrupt? You know, our nervous system is wired to keep us in our comfort zone. So whatever has been comfortable for us, whether that's the amount of money we think we're worth, or if we grew up in a chaotic home, or whatever we have experienced that our nervous system has been wired to believe as this is comfortable and safe, anything beyond that, even if it's good growth, we can freak out, even if it's something that's good for us. And so our nervous system only knows this is new, danger, danger, it's trying to protect us. And so it's just good for us to be aware of that and to consciously come in and remind ourselves, hey, as we're expanding and going where we want to go, this is actually safe. Okay. So the last thing I'll say today on repairing the actual trust in the marriage is intimacy. You know, every search engine, magazine, movie, and TV show out there jumps straight into building intimacy while bypassing self-trust. Intimacy is a natural byproduct of 2 separate souls just brimming with self-trust and trust for the other person involved. But social media, reality TV, all of these things romanticize key number 3 while totally skipping keys 1 and 2. It's the deep inner work that's the foundation. But can you imagine like The Bachelorette or some reality TV show like that airing episodes of women just meditating and rewiring their subconscious and moving trauma out of their body? Like I've never seen a show like that in my life. It's not what sells. Intimacy is what's juicy. It's the desired outcome. And we live in a world where we love shortcuts, right? And instant success and flashy, exteriors. But when we embody the deep work, that's when the intimacy can really start to manifest. And so there's 12 different kinds of intimacy. There's, sexual, that's the tip of the iceberg, but everything below the surface, it's emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, aesthetic intimacy, creative, recreational, work, crisis, commitment. There's so many different things that can build intimacy. So my friends, we covered a lot today. And I want to end with a final visualization. And for this, I'll invite you to, if you want to do camera off, close your eyes, any way where you can just like kind of get into your own energy. I want to invite you into what could be the most powerful part of this webinar today, because it's not hearing me talk at you, it's really tuning into you. So when you're ready, feel free to close your eyes. If it's comfortable. If not, just rest your eyes at a soft gaze. And I want to invite you to rub your pointer and thumb together. Pointer finger and thumb together as hard as you can. And just notice the feeling of your own fingerprints, the texture of your own skin, maybe the heat or coldness of your fingers today. And then you can stop and curl your toes, flex your feet, roll your ankles. You can yawn. You've just taken in a lot of information. You can shake if it feels good. Take a deep breath in, stretch, crack your knuckles, your back, whatever feels good to get into your body. Now, as we settle in, I invite you to, as I ask these questions, just answer, whether it's with a pen and paper in your mind or out loud, just the stream of consciousness, whatever comes to mind when I ask you these questions. This is just tuning into an exercise of self-trust, tapping into your intuition. So imagine yourself 3 months from now. So August you. And you're looking back at what has transpired over these last 3 months. What exists now? What do you know has happened? Again, no right or wrong. Just notice what comes up. What do you know that you've said yes to? What do you know you've said no to? What has transpired or shifted in your life? Now, when you're ready, you can blink your eyes open. And this may be worth revisiting later tonight when the kids are down or whenever you have a minute to yourself again. Just really going into this is a really powerful exercise when you can just tap into your higher self and the future you. And it can guide you truly to where you're meant to be. And so I want to recap before we land this plane today, guys, what we've learned today. I showed you key number 1, self-trust, where we learned what corrodes it as well as how to rebuild it. Showed you key number 2, trust in your husband, how it begins and ends with trust in yourself. And key number 3, trust in the relationship as a separate entity and how to build intimacy. So let me ask you a question. If you had the choice between trying to do this all yourself without any guidance and having someone who's already done it time and time again and been trained to help you and guide you, work with you to get the results, which would you choose? Type a 1 in the chat if you prefer to go it alone, or a 2 in the chat if you'd rather have help and guidance. I see 2s. That's good news. So for those of you on today who feel like, okay, this wasn't enough, I really want deeper guidance on how to reclaim trust in my marriage, then I do want to take a chance to tell you about my program that teaches you just that. It's called Root to Rise, and it's designed to help you reclaim thriving trust in your marriage by moving trauma out of your body. And it's not a course where you just watch some videos and hope for results. Like, you'll be able to ask real questions in real time, get live coaching on your personal situation instead of just watching recorded videos and trying to figure it out alone. And if you've listened to any of my client testimonials or podcasts, like, you know, this program can change your life. And many of those clients are on today. So this will be 45 minutes of just diving deep into your marriage, your challenges, what's worked, what hasn't, where you want to be. And then I'll lay out the exact roadmap that I give my clients to reclaim that deep, unshakable trust in your marriage. And if you've done one of these sessions with me already, I'd love to gift you a personalized EFT tapping session instead. So the reason I'm doing this is, 1, I am continually looking to collect market research on the greatest challenges my clients have, what's worked for them, what hasn't. And 2, I know a lot of you desperately do want this next level of guidance in your marriage, and you're not sure if me or my program is the best step for you. So this call will let you feel me out, get some free coaching, and then at the end have total freedom to decide if partnering with me makes sense or if this masterclass and this deep dive call was more than enough. So either way, I am happy if you're happy, whether I was, a one-time blip on your radar or this is the start of a deeper relationship. Just honored to be the best blip or the best coach I can be to you. So if you want to reclaim trust in your marriage, if you want to claim this deep dive session, drop the word trust. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for finding this masterclass worth your time. I loved hanging out with you, and we went a little bit over, but I hope it was of value, and I'll chat with you guys soon. Huge hugs.